With Metroid Dread now coming out, or out already, I don't know why I said coming out, I thought it'd be a good time to rank all the Metroid games. All 14 of them. So yeah, it's a ranking from worst to best, and it's my opinion, and also, I'm not including AM2R, because as good as that game is, it's not really an official Metroid game. I know I sound like somebody from Nintendo's legal team, but let's be real here. But other than that, it's all fair game. Anyways, before we get started, you know what to do. Be sure to like this video, subscribe if you hit the bell, and leave a comment, or I'll hunt you down.
Some of the most serious diseases.
And this November, California voters decide if they wish to spend billions to help fund the work. Here's a look at Proposition 14.
Okay, you probably expected one game to be at the very bottom of the list, but you are wrong because it's Metroid Prime Federation Force that's on the bottom of the list, because it's really just Metroid in name only. First off, Federation Force did not need to be named Metroid Prime at all, because all that's going to do is drum up hype and eventual disappointment, even if it was good. But it's not even good, as it's simply just a forgettable and bland shooter where you control nameless soldiers. And Blast Ball is basically a poor man's Rocket League that you'll get bored of in 2 minutes tops, and I forgot that was even a part of this game. That's why Metroid Prime Federation Force is on the very bottom of the list. Okay, now we talk about Metroid Other M. You probably expected this to be at the very bottom of the list, but at least it is Metroid in more than just name only. I gotta give it that, and I also gotta give them credit for taking risks with the game and making a more narrative-driven experience, but oh god, never do what they did in this game. Never do that again. In retrospect, I think Samus works the best as a silent protagonist and not waifu bait, who constantly says the word baby throughout the whole game. While the story sucks ass, the gameplay doesn't really help it too much either. While not unplayable, Metroid Other M is just a generic action game that doesn't seem to know if it wants to be 2D or 3D, so it just does both. There are some games that do 2D, 3D just very well, but this game is not one of it. Not an awful game, not as bad, not quite as bad as I think some people say it is, but definitely not good.
19 men attacked our country. The 12 of you will be the first ones to fight back.
How do you love your family and leave them to go to war?
I never really understood the hype behind pinball games, unless your name is Devil's Crush or Alien's Crush. Yeah, I don't really care. And unfortunately, Metroid Prime Pinball doesn't really do it for me. Now don't get me wrong, there's nothing offensive about this game, but it's a pinball game. That's all I got really. I don't really know what else to say. It's Metroid Prime Pinball.
Number 11. Your father will die.
Hey, remember Metroid Prime Hunters? It was kind of a big deal at the time, as I believe it was one of Nintendo's earliest games with online play, but it's sort of been forgotten, but I mean, it's a fine game. While Metroid Prime Hunters was a decent demonstration for what the DS can do, it doesn't really do much to set itself apart from other Metroid games, or even just other space shooters in general. The touchscreen was innovative for the time, but hasn't necessarily aged the best, and neither have the visuals. Metroid Prime Hunters is alright, but is on the bottom because it's simply just alright.
I wanted to give to you, the last part of your notes here, the significance spiritually of the number 10 in the Bible.
Metroid 2 on the Game Boy is often overlooked. That kinda sucks because Metroid 2 Return of Samus is actually a pretty good game. Since it's on the Game Boy though, Metroid 2 Return of Samus hasn't particularly aged the best, as it's pretty limited, but it's a nice game for the Game Boy. It's not really higher because many elements of this game are carried over from the first Metroid on NES, but it's still one of the best games on the Game Boy. Now don't get me wrong, the whole Metroid Prime trilogy, is certainly essential and one of the best trilogies of all time in video games. But one had to be the last one, and that one is Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. It's not bad at all, though, as it is still a fantastic game. It did fall a little short from a few aspects when compared to the first Metroid Prime or even the third one, like the multiplayer for example, but it's a solid time playing for sure.
So I'm going to be giving this flavor 8.5 out of 10 scoops.
Now we are where it all began with the very first Metroid. While obviously outdated since it's come out and had other games since, the original Metroid is actually pretty solid and holds up decently well. It helped evolve the 2D side-scrolling platform genre into what it is today and simply pioneered the Metroid series and started it with a bang. I don't really have much to say on it, but Metroid simply just helped lay the groundwork for bigger and better games to come.
36.
Very close, but that's not it. Let's go to Gary the Retard. What number between 2 and 4?
7.
So we go from the original Metroid to a remake of the original Metroid. That's right, number 7 is Metroid Zero Mission, and it's more of a complete overhaul too. For one, you have more of a story here and act almost as a prequel to Metroid 2, Fusion, and Super Metroid. There are also the segments where you get to play as Zero Suit Samus, which technically marks her very first appearance in a Metroid game. Metroid Zero Mission is simply just the NES game, but better.
Okay, Mrs. Puff, what's my final score?
6.
Woo! We go from a remake of the first Metroid to a remake of the second one. I'm of course talking about Metroid Samus Returns. While Metroid 2 shows its age in many ways, Samus Returns remakes the game and makes Metroid 2 more modernized and looks great too. Samus Returns also overhauls the gameplay by adding in a melee attack that helps you counter enemies. Metroid Samus Returns is a truly faithful remake, and I wish it was on the Switch, not the 3DS on its dying days, because more people probably would have played it then.
Oh, chills. Literal chills.
It was number 5. Number 5 killed my brother.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
The final Metroid Prime. Until 4, that is. And as a trilogy, it stands very well, and one reason is because Metroid Prime 3 Corruption was a great game to go out with. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption is one of few games on the Wii like this that utilize the motion controls very well and made for a very nice gameplay experience. While it does suffer from annoying load times, which is a flaw, it might be the best game in the franchise visually. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption is simply a great end to one of the greatest gaming trilogies of all time. Guys, Metroid Fusion came out almost 20 years ago, and my god, it hasn't aged a bit. After the critical acclaim that Super Metroid was met with, the developers leaned more towards horror for Metroid Fusion, and my god, it works. Metroid Fusion was certainly high on tension and scares, and that drove a big part of the narrative, not to mention the action and abilities and the weapons you got are really cool, and you just got a superb Metroid game. Here it is, the most recent Metroid game that we thought was cancelled, and then not cancelled, and cancelled again, and then lo and behold, E3 2021 happens, and we get to see Metroid Dread, and just a few months later, we are playing it, and my god, this game is awesome. Metroid Dread is certainly a very fun game to play, with boss fights that are surprisingly challenging yet extremely rewarding, and the different upgrades and abilities are super cool. Throw that in with the enemies that you either need to run away from in frightening fashion or blow their heads off in satisfying fashion, and Metroid Dread is well worth the wait. Please buy Metroid Dread and don't pirate it. This game needs to sell well.
What kind of pencil do we take again?
Number 2. Take a number 2.
Looks like you took a big number 2.
I'm a Luigi, number 1.
Okay. I'm kind of cheating a bit here, as you probably figured out by now that I'm doing both number 1 and number 2 together, and that is Metroid Prime and Super Metroid. I really don't know which game is better. Super Metroid is simply legendary, and along with Symphony of the Night, created a new genre of video games, Metroidvania, while Metroid Prime took the Metroid games, turned it into a first-person shooter, and made it spectacular. Both are memorable, both are legendary, both can work as the best Metroid game of all time, and both can work as one of the greatest games of all time. So I don't know which one's better, but that's why they're both technically the best. You guys decide. What did you guys think of my ranking of all the Metroid games? Do you agree with me? Do you not agree with me? You give me your ranking down below. Although it is quite a bit of... it's 14 games, so if you want to rank all of them, you can, but if not, maybe give me your top 5 or top 7, since that's half of 14. Math. Anyways, be sure to like this video, comment, subscribe, or I'll hunt you down. Bye!